Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Van Chats. I'm sitting here with Ted King, Ted King's ex-World Tour Pro. As many of you know, he is now racing gravel and privateering. And I mean, him and Allison Tetrick are probably like two of the athletes that I think of that pretty much started that, I would say, and made it cool. But anyways, you guys can argue with me on that in the comments if you want. But anyways, Ted, how you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for making the time and for having the patience, as we were just talking about real quick, since this is a long time coming.
Oh yeah. No, I think it works out perfect because you recently, well, like I mean, you've been going through a lot. I mean, you just had a kid.
Yes, which if you listen really carefully, she is incredibly mild-mannered and she is amazing and a blessing. She's right above me right now. It's 5 p.m. here on the East Coast and she is wailing, which is so rare. So
Really?
yeah, I mean, it's nice. We're slowly figuring out the cues and what various words and cries mean as she's
Right
now
on.
7 months old. And this means she's exhausted. So she's been up for a little bit too long.
She's telling you to go to bed, man.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but yeah, so I guess we'll just dive into it, man. I really want to hear about your van right off the rip.
Yeah.
Speaking of the kid, because the young one, she took us through the van tour, which I thought was pretty cool. So
Yeah.
let's hear about it.
So, I think there's the romanticized view of everybody wants a van. It sounds fun. Like, dude, it's van life. It's COVID van life.
Sure, Instagram versus reality.
Yeah, truth. So
Yeah.
our reality is Laura and I had talked about it. We probably never would have had a van were it not for little baby Hazel and COVID. So my family is relatively small and here on the East Coast. I'm speaking with you from Vermont, our home in Vermont. My family is in New Hampshire and Maine. And so they've had the luxury, or whatever you want to call it, of meeting Hazel because Hazel is now 7 months old. All of Laura's family, my wife's family, is out in Seattle. So we wanted to figure out a way to introduce Hazel to half of her family.
Oh man, yeah.
So I don't know. I think at the beginning of the pandemic, people thought it was going to last a couple of weeks, a couple of months, whatever it is. By midsummer, we were okay. But then we fast forward to midsummer, and obviously getting on a plane still is either dangerous or stigmatized or whatever it is. So longer story short, a friend of a friend basically didn't realize he wanted to sell his van until we hatched the idea and sort of planted in his mind. And so conveniently, he and his family are cyclists. And so they've often taken some cool bike trips. And so it was already set up for first sleeping, and there's a 20-gallon shower and there's external shower.
Yeah.
There was at that point room for 2 bikes, and we've upped the ante to make it room for 4 bikes. And yeah, with a 4-month-old daughter, we put her in the van and drove coast to coast, and
That's insane.
Basically made it a 8-week adventure.
That is insane. I feel like most parents would be listening to this being like, you just made parenting that much harder. Like, geez.
I mean, yes, we are blessed with a very, again, mild-mannered, happy, easygoing child, and we are still complete rookies at this. We've received a similar message, but another cool message we've seen is like your child. Sure, there's nature versus nurture, and her nature is to be easygoing, but we've also been taught like she is going to be accustomed to what you give her in life, and we live a pretty spontaneous.
So in 20 years, she's just going to be racing gravel, living out of a van, and vlogging.
The dirtbag lifestyle brought to her at the age of 4 months.
Right on. Well, that's cool, man. Yeah. So doing all these van trips, because you've kind of been all over, popping in, seeing some friends. What are some things that you were like, oh, on the next trip, I'm definitely going to have this? Because I've already had that. Mine was toilet paper when I got stuck out in Moab.
Yep.
So
good one. I'm a pretty good planner, so we had a good supply of paper towel and toilet paper. Mm-hmm. We had a trowel for our bathroom needs. But we did most certainly acquire the van and hit the road within 36 hours on an 8-week trip. So it would have been nice to go through a trial trip. you certainly overpack. You on a trip like that, you're going to bring a lot more than you need.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, I mean, that was a funny reality of coming back home, is like you can operate on very, very little.
Well, also you guys were like, you were 4 months into being parents. And so now this is the first time you're traveling with the kid too, right?
Right.
Jeez. Okay.
So, we're psyched to not have to pack it into duffel bags and put it on an airplane.
Yeah.
Because, I've had great deal of empathy for any parent who I've ever seen going through security, and it's just like baby stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
And so, having the luxury of just being able to throw it all in also made it so that we probably had too much stuff, too much bike stuff, too much just general clothes and apparel, to too much baby stuff. But
Yeah.
so answer your original question. What did we pack that we didn't need? I mean, it's goofy. Like, we went down and we brought a life jacket for Hazel,
Yeah.
it's a very small life jacket. And we brought 2 straw hats. I mean, like, we probably could have gotten by with 1 straw hat. One thing, we had bug spray. Turns out in the Wild West, there's not many bugs. Whereas here, there's a lot of mosquitoes and ticks to be wary of. So there you go. Bug spray.
Bug spray is one thing is too much, one thing too many.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think when I was planning on bugging you in Mid-South and trying to get you to do a podcast out of my van. That was the goal. But that's when shit hit the fan. Things got nuts. But that's when the little one came too, right? Around that time.
Yeah, exactly.
So how has that kind of affected your season? Like, are you going to race at all in 2020, you think, or?
I mean, at this point, no. This past weekend was the first time that I showed up at a event since February. It was here in Vermont. It's inherently socially distanced. There were 11 people on the start line at 5 a.m. in the middle of the darkness, in the middle of the woods.
Wow.
I will very likely be doing a 1,040-mile Arkansas high country race beginning October 31st. This is my first public announcement about this. It's a self-supported, again, inherently socially isolating, socially distancing. I think 24 people or so, not even 24 people, did it last year. The FKT, fastest known time, is by the legend Jay Peterberry, who did it in 5.5 days.
Jeez.
So.
And it's all self-supported bike packing.
Correct.
Okay, let's just go ahead and just transfer into this. Like this. Okay, this is kind of what I wanted to hear. So
yeah.
What does that look like? Like, how did you even find out about this? Because I've never even heard of this.
That's what's so fun about about all of it. Like, anyway, where did I hear about this? Bobby Wintle is,
okay.
This is where it goes full circle. Bobby Wintle told me about it. Bobby Wintle is the creator of Mid-South, and he owns District Bicycles.
Amazing guy.
Stillwater. He's outstanding. And he said, dude, you got to do this event. Bobby does long distance stuff. He does Ride Divide, Tour Divide. I don't know. It looked interesting. Rebecca Rush, who also was very instrumental in facilitating my introduction to gravel, she originally had the FKT because she was the first and only person to do it when they created the route last year.
Okay.
Basically, that northwest corner of Arkansas, NWA. Yeah. Bentonville, Fayetteville, Little Rock. They've created a really cool bicycle culture, sure, admittedly with the support of the Walton fam. But there's some incredible riding up there, and they have created this route called the Arkansas High Country. So check it out on bike packing. It's like they have a northern route and a southern route, and then when you link them together, you got this whole entire 1,040-mile route. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm taking a huge lateral step. Like, sure, I can ride long distance and I can do some gravel racing, but it's a big step to do the self-supported multi-day stuff. Yeah. I've slept outside on purpose, I think, on one trip in my life, which was high stakes. I was up in northern Canada in February on a pretty wild trip. And so this will be conveniently with near fall conditions in Arkansas. It might be a little bit damp. It could be a little cool. It could be spicy hot. Who knows? But that's
when is this?
It starts October 31.
Okay.
So what? Zeroing in on half month away.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's how do you pack incredibly minimally? The whole light system, right? I mean, like at that time of year, there's not a ton of light in the day, and there are plenty of hours that you need to be pedaling. So the hub generated light system, and how do you generate power to charge your phone and charge your GPS? These are all things that, talking to Rebecca, talking to Bobby, it's doing a whole lot of research on the internet. It's cool.
Oh, you should just get Ashton Lambie to build you up a set. I mean, he's
Of
all
what?
into the dynamo.
Is he doing the night stuff? Okay,
Oh,
right.
he loves
Well,
that stuff.
But
He thinks it's amazing.
it is amazing.
Yeah.
Bobby's been really big in helping me out there.
Well, that's cool. So yeah, I mean, that's interesting in the sense that like you got to pack minimally. Well, in Arkansas, it gets pretty cold pretty quick.
It is, and it's their second rainiest month of the year is October. So
all gravel.
It's 50-50. It's a good portion road, paved, gravel. But shoot, it was 51 weeks ago right now. So 1 week shy of a year ago that I was in Arkansas for Outer Bike, and when they were announcing Big Sugar, which normally would have been in about 2 weeks. And dude, the riding there is crazy hilly and like sharp, gnarly gravel and some not high stakes, but it's pretty burly ride.
Yeah. And so what is your goal, like FKT, like fastest you can go? Or are you just gonna kind of go give it a rip?
I'm gonna go give it a rip. You know, I don't want to go in being like, I'm going to set a record at an event that I've never done before, eyes wide open, take it all in. I think, it's a good segue to the next portion of the conversation. Like, I have no idea what next year is going to hold. I'm excited for getting back to business as usual, but we don't really know. So one thing we have seen a lot of in 2020 is these events popping up and creating new adventures and going to do something new and different that takes you out of your comfort zone. And this certainly hits all those things.
Yeah. So have you ever done anything like this to even compare it to? Cause like I could go, like I did White Rim and that for me was like, how hard can it be? It's just 100 miles kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really cherished store stops as much until you don't have the slightest access to it. Yes. And so like little things like that, whereas like, have you put any of that into thought or into context?
The Canadian trip I mentioned. So February 2019, I teamed up with three. One was a good friend and two acquaintances, and did the James Bay descent. So James Bay is up in northern Canada, and we drove in on a crazy long ice road, like 18 hours of driving, something absurd. And we're self-supported all through the winter and did I think 8-day trip, 500 kilometers, 300 miles, sleeping in the woods. Like the coldest we saw was -40, -42 degrees. Like that's high stakes, real deal.
Oh yeah. I think I saw some stuff on that. Like those conditions are insane.
Yes. Like the definition of inhospitable, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, I'm with you, like, whether it is riding the White Rim, whether it is multi-day trips there, I had a huge appreciation at the moment of just being taken out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
It sort of relates. Van life is certainly cush by comparison, but it sort of strips down to the basics. Like what do you really need? What can you get by on? And those two things are going to be comparable.
No, yeah, that sounds like an awesome adventure. And so, kind of segueing into plans for 2021, like, let's say that, cause like me I like to call myself a professional cyclist, I race for the national team or whatever, but I've never been professional per se. But like,
it's a vague term, that whole
professional. Yeah. So depending on how you guys want to look at it, but having this year to just do White Rim or to go to Mid-South or to do these things where I'm not stuck in a track in Europe in October has been very refreshing. and almost very eye-opening. And so like you, who's been pro since what, I think I'm looking at 2006, you were on a Continental team, and then now you've moved to gravel. And as much as you like to say that you're having fun, which you are having fun, I'm assuming, it's still a job, man. So like, and now with a kid here, like how has it been just having the year off to just kind of take a step back and take a deep breath?
It's been fascinating.
Yeah.
And I can say that with the luxury of landing on my feet and being healthy and having a healthy family. And I mean, there's so many people who have been adversely or horrifically affected that, you know, it takes an event like this to put it in perspective. So yeah, it's been eye-opening. I mean, the first, like, Hazel was born March 8th. The pandemic effectively started here in Vermont 2 days later. So, you know, we were home, and we in normal circumstances, when I'm home between events, between travel, between races, Untapped, which is the sports nutrition company that I co-founded, located, you know, 5 miles down the road. Normally I'm there on free days, and, you know, the face-to-face contact that really is irreplaceable. That is a big part of my time, and my partners there are very as familial as it gets. I mean, they would have given me all the time in the world to be home on paternity leave. But it just opened up this whole new reality. So it's a tremendous blessing to have this time at home with Hazel. My wife and I both work effectively as independent contractors. So there's not a normal routine, and, you know, it works well 99% of the time. And we figure out how to get by that other 1%.
Well, so as an athlete, so you're seeing it as an athlete, and how are you seeing it on the business side of things? Because I'm hearing it go both ways. You know, we've had a few business people on here, whether they're, you know, promoters or just in the industry alone. Like we had Yuri Oswald on here, and for GU, it's been up and down. How's it been for Untapped?
Yeah, I mean, I wear many hats in all of those realms. So Untapped, business owner there. My wife and I run Rooted Vermont. You know, we have an event. There's Ted King, the athlete. There's Ted King, the sponsored athlete. So, you know, piecemeal, Untapped for the past, we're 7 years old as a company, and we've grown strongly for the past 7 years. But, you know, conveniently, as we are still the original founding partners, we get to dictate the pace, and we're not reporting to investors. So we grow at a fun rate, and we develop at a fun rate. And it's going to be a hard year, but we'll survive it, no problem. It is a big speed bump, and we'll get through it. Putting on my Rooted Vermont hat, you know, we're as bummed as anybody to not have an event. You know, we had to postpone, and you really do, you empathize with the rider, and you empathize with the participant, you empathize with, you know, with a sponsor who was going to be on site at Expo. And so we've deferred a lot of entries. That leaves relatively few entries for 2021. Like I said, you know, we're as optimistic as anybody that we'll be able to launch next year. So hopefully that goes off. We've all reason to believe that things will be a little bit more normal by August 2021. On a personal front, you know, I had a nice boost of confidence at the relatively early side of the pandemic, when, you know, the world goes into lockdown, and I had a conversation with a pretty primary sponsor of mine. I said, you know, this is a scary new reality to be in a pandemic, and I don't know how to contribute. And at that point, it was I was beginning things like the DIYgravel campaign, beginning to think of other creative ways to engage with my sponsors. And basically my point is, they're like, now more than ever, we realize the importance of athletes as ambassadors, as a privateer, as opposed to the World Tour teams. Like, at that point, there was zero racing, and World Tour racing was, you know, zilch. And if you live and race in the World Tour, you know, you live with your blinders on. You don't have time to do anything else. So it was a nice boost of confidence to be like, your value now is as important as ever. And then you got to put on your creative hat, and it's worked out.
No, yeah. That was super impressive. I mean, like it was almost as if that event itself was like one of the biggest things, like even on Strava. I think it like almost triggered other people to do those little Strava campaigns. Like you were like one of the first ones I saw with the DIYgravel when you said,
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it early on. I was, racking my brain, like, how can I don't know. Push the value of sponsors. You still need to be acting if you're not going to events. And so I just, hey, what the heck? I mean, people are going to be doing it anyway. Like, let's create this thing. And like virtual events are a dime a dozen. And so it's hard to get some creative value behind it, but it's amazing the number of comments I got that were from people who are submitting their ride on the DIY gravel website, and they'd have a comment was like, "Thank you for inspiring me. Thank you for lighting this fire under my butt. Like, I wouldn't be riding if it wasn't for DIYgravel." I'm just like, wow, like this is a really cool thing. So
it's awesome.
I was psyched.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I got a few more questions for you, and we're gonna kind of trigger into your old days. I want to know, because like I said, like I have this background of traveling with the national team, having crazy roommates, crazy travel stories, and I always love to hear them. So what's your craziest travel story to whatever race while you were in the world tour, or just even traveling? Because like, I mean, I know you went and did a race over in Iceland.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Ashton, I think Chaz, they were going to take a boat to go do GB Duro.
Whoa.
Because GB Duro didn't want anybody flying over. They only wanted people, they wanted to make it a very self-supported style of racing. And I think there was like, some environmental things within that, but
right.
It was going to be an 8-day boat ride. But yeah, I
can't believe that exists. I mean, it sounds like, what's the name of the book? Boys in the Boat? Maybe it was Boys in the Boat. Did you ever read that? Ellen Hillenbrand, is that her name, the author? It was basically about 1940s rowers when they have to go to the Olympics on the other side of the globe, and they take a boat to get there, and they lose fitness along the way, but yada yada yada. I mean, crazy. Yeah, what an adventure.
It's insane.
Let's see, crazy adventure stories. I have this. Oh man. Let's see. There was a time that I raced in Tour of San Luis, so down in South America.
Okay.
And then I made it back to New England, where I was like hitting the reset button. You unpack one suitcase and you pack up a suitcase, and then I was going over to Europe and,
for sure,
and begin the season. And we got a pretty crazy blizzard. So Boston was under, I don't know, we probably got like 6 feet of snow over the course of one storm. And so I ended up having to go from the airport to a friend's house, to the airport to a friend's house, airport, friend's house, ultimately the airport, and flew over. My stories aren't that crazy. The other one at San Luis was a exceptionally long delay in Argentina, and then I'm flying back to Europe, and I basically spent 17 hours on my birthday, January 31st, on an airplane from South America to Europe. That was,
jeez,
a center seat somewhere back in stowage. That's not where you want to spend your birthday.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, right. Like living that dream.
Yeah.
I got one. I raced Tour of Dubai. Oh wait, no, Tour of Taiwan. And I was I had a French teammate who, this is while I was on liquid gas, and so it's a very stoic, old school Italian racing lifestyle. Like you don't just race with the team, you live the lifestyle. And I remember I pulled my teammate aside and I was like, "Hey, I just noticed that we can upgrade to business class for like €300 on this 12-hour flight. I think we should do it." And we both did, and live the dapper lap of luxury up front while the rest of the team is like angrily sitting in the back. So much so that we could like go to the business lounge. And I remember we were drinking in the business lounge. It came ridiculously close to missing the flight as a result of overconsumption.
Oh man.
Um, that was on the way back post race. I mean, we of course treated the race very seriously.
Yeah. You make it seem like as if somebody from Liquid Gas is like going to come find you and be like, "Oh yeah, we need all our money back." I just heard that story on John's podcast.
Yes, it is. Man, I mean, the time at Liquid Gas, it was such an adventure, and
yeah,
you can't help but feel like they had a thumb on you all the time. Like it's sort of embarrassing in hindsight. Like you just feel like a child, and I mean, they treated you like a child. You know, I can picture times with racing, man, like with Sagan in sort of a pre-Sagan of prominence era, and you could tell that he felt treated like a child, and he was like he would literally ask me, like, do other teams treat you like this? Do other teams have such control? I mean, like the most ridiculous stuff. But
who was your favorite roommate? And that can be from any team. Yeah, it doesn't have to be from Liquid Gas.
Yeah, I mean, my first roommate ever when I got to the World Tour was Tor Hushovd, which was pretty next level. That was super cool at a training camp with Cervelo test team. Sagan was great. Paolo Longo Borghini would probably be the answer to that, though. He's an Italian guy, you know, old school, great Italian racer, raced for a lot of. He was just like the quintessential domestique. He was married to an American, and that really helped his English, and that helped my Italian, and we got along like peas and carrots.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
No, yeah, that's super cool. So, yeah, and I got two more questions. So, like one of the questions that I kind of wanted to dive into for the younger lads that are listening to this, I think cycling's taking a different route. Like I kind of came in at the age of 18, and I was watching a lot of these young guys. Like I didn't understand it. Like, cause when I came from a football and wrestling background, and I didn't understand that these kids have been doing this their entire life. And then I would get to know some of these kids I looked up to, and I would start hanging out with these kids, and they rode for some of the best U23 teams, whether that's Garmin, Action, or whatever. And some of these kids that didn't get that next shot, whether it was the World Tour or just something a little higher, they started to phase out, and depression was kicking in. But I think I'm seeing this gravel thing might be the saving grace to some of that, in the sense of privateering, having a little bit more control of your development per se. What is kind of some of your feedback to a kid that maybe wants to go into the World Tour, but is kind of hitting on that stress, or even wanting to go pro, I guess is the best way to put it. What's kind of some tidbit, I guess, to give them?
It's a great question. I think gravel is, or has the potential to be, the saving grace of cycling in America.
Yeah.
To think pie in the sky, you know, it's for the first time in my time in the cycling. So I've been in cycling basically for the better part of 2 decades, and it's not going to be a criterion. It's certainly not going to be stage racing here in America. Grand Fondos, you might get a little bit of infiltration, but like these aspects are not going to draw the masses to cycling. Yeah. Whereas for the first time in my experience in cycling, gravel is this magnet that has the ability to draw all classes, all genders, all socioeconomic backgrounds. It is interesting and engaging for all, which is why you show up at the big gravel races, especially just because it's going to be a bigger swath of people, and you do see it all. Certainly, gravel is not perfect. It's still dominated by white men in spandex.
Yeah.
However, you see greater diversity than elsewhere. So
for sure,
that's what I think is great about this sport. I remember I don't want to take this too long in this story. So I retired.
For it. Yeah.
I retired from the World Tour in 2015. And 2016 was my first year of being an ambassador. And that was, having a wonderful list of sponsors who who allowed me to pretty creative justice to write my own schedule and go do this, that, and the other. In 2016, gravel was not gravel. There was no gravel schedule. There was no one ever used the term professional gravel racer, which is still a term that grits at me. So the world of gravel is so young, even though people have been racing and riding off-road for a long time. My point is, I remember in 2016, my first year removed from World Tour racing, I was talking to friends in Boulder, and they were saying that they know Boulder junior cyclists in 2016 who want to be Ted King, who want to be a pro gravel racer, which is certainly flattering. But it's not the kind of thing you do as a 17-year-old, like without cutting your teeth in the World Tour.
Yeah.
So, you certainly pay your dues because maybe gravel will boom in such a way that you can jump in to be a professional gravel racer and make that your career. But I think the privateer nature is going to be limiting. It's going to be individuals who could pull it off before it is teams and many, many, many dozens or hundreds of people doing it. That's the reality of making it to the next level, which when I say next level, to make it to be a viable income. And that's when I rely back to the original point of like how cool gravel is, how fun gravel is, and how lifetime gravel is. Like you do it whether you're 12 years old or 72 years old. It has that ability to be the lifetime sport that I think cycling is meant to be, as opposed to, say, wrestling and football, or my background is hockey. Well, I guess there is a lot of contact that can happen at any age, but
yeah, there
are so many sports, especially American sports, that you hyper focus on, and then they last a short period after high school.
For sure.
And I'm the same boat. Like I didn't start riding a bike until I was 19 years old. Prior to that, I played varsity sports. So I'm planting this lesson into the up and coming athlete. Yeah. I mean, it takes a dedication and it takes a focus to be successful at the sport. Obviously, cycling and endurance sports rewards, a whole lot of training. But if it's not going to be your career, like still make it an outlet, make it a therapy, make it something fun, because that is the masses, and that is what gravel I think really is.
No, yeah, that's good, man. And I think another thing too to touch on is just like with sponsorships, the amount of people, and I've done it before I probably ever deserved one. I was just like, hey, give me X.
Oh gosh,
and then the sponsor's response is, well, why?
Yeah.
Because I'll post an Instagram post. Okay, you have 1,000 followers.
Yeah.
So give me another reason, And so I think another good feedback is just trying to find value, trying to find creative ways. I think it's crazy, even with your following, you still find creative ways like DIYgravel and such. And so, I think that's another good tidbit. But last question, final question. My favorite part of this show is this is the I'm trying to bring the build up here.
All right. I like it.
You can have coffee with one person.
Oh, wow.
Dead or alive. Who would that person be? How would you take your coffee? And now I know that there's some people on here that don't drink coffee. So if you have to have tea, that's fine. How would you take your tea? Let's hear it.
Man.
You can even go into the process, man. Do you want an AeroPress? Do you want an espresso? How do you want it, man? Mocha pot? Let's hear it.
This is great. The interesting part, I wrap up my podcast, King of the Ride podcast, with 3 questions. And then I'm always like, why is it taking you so long to answer? Like, these are easy questions. Only to realize when you turn the tables and you ask me a question.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's only one person on this show that has been like, no question. Like, I asked the question, didn't tell him. It was Justin Williams. He was like, Kobe Bryant, vanilla latte, boom, done.
Yeah. Great answer. Okay. How about Cam Neely? Hockey was my sport. Cam Neely was a fabulous, a amazing Boston Bruin. I want to say he was left wing. He's the general manager for the Bruins right now.
All right.
He's not necessarily a cyclist, but I would still love to
That's perfect.
Brain. AeroPress is I make at least 2 AeroPresses a day, so that's too easy. I'd probably, I tend to just get an Americano.
Okay. All right.
Not a lot of water, splash of cream.
Boom. Done.
So,
And you'd probably even bring some Untapped to hopefully become the Bruins
yes.
Untapped sponsor. So
You know, it's interesting to that point. We for a long time have been supplying untapped maple syrup to the Carolina Hurricanes of the NHL. So
wow, that's nuts. Me being from South Carolina, I really appreciate the support. I've never been to a Hurricanes game, but I appreciate that. South Carolina boy at heart. I'm
right on.
20 minutes from North Carolina, so
Nice. Yeah,
I think they're in Charlotte, right?
I gotta assume so.
Okay.
I can't imagine there'd be a NHL team in any other city in either of the Carolinas than Charlotte.
Maybe Raleigh, but that's like,
Could be.
or Winston. I guess now I'm naming like a few cities that like I'm like, oh, okay, maybe. Well, cool, man. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, this was a long time coming. And hopefully, I get to see you at an event in 2021, and we can do
No
it
kidding.
live.
Fingers crossed.
That'd be cool. Other than that, man, be safe, be well, be healthy, and thank you guys so much for listening. If you guys want, check out Ted's social media down below. Probably if you're already listening to this, you're probably just figuring out who I am. So you already know who Ted is. So anyways, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Appreciate ya. Thanks, John.